I scaled this e-commerce brand right here to $1.8 million in revenue per month just from Google Ads alone. And in this video, I want to go over exactly how we made this happen. But before diving into any of the actual strategy and the nitty-gritty details, let's take a step back and understand this e-commerce brand on a fundamental level. Now, this specific e-commerce brand sells car parts and accessories, and it's a very niche down brand because it sells products like these, where it sells specific types of clutch kits for a specific car brand, or it also sells things like hoods for cars. So because of the narrowed approach of this brand, the competitors are also not as extreme as, for example, selling beauty products. However, if you look right over here, there's still a decent amount of competitors that do sell these kinds of specific products. But despite that, we were able to make this extreme scale happen, and this is one of our best case studies to date. Now, if we look at their Google Ads account, you can see in the last 30 days, we're looking at roughly $175,000 in ad spend for a total of $1.84 million in revenue. That's almost an 11x ROAS. But if we look at the last 14 days, we can see that this brand does roughly $830,000 every 14 days. And now moving on to the Google Analytics side of things, we can see that on a 30-day period, roughly $3.5 million in revenue. So you can assume that this brand does $3 to $4 million per month just in revenue in total. Now, half of this, to about 70% of it, does come from Google Ads. But if we see right here, we can see that a lot of this revenue is coming from various different sources, things such as cross network, where maybe individuals saw an ad on Facebook, then they Googled the product and they ended up purchasing it that way. Or it may be directly coming from Facebook or Instagram ads or even TikTok ads and so on and so forth. But a lot of it is coming from things like organic search, paid shopping, organic shopping, etc., etc. So all of these things basically fall under the cross network, even the Google Ads sales, because as you can see, they have done a very specific way of recording all of these sales and recording all of the traffic sources. I mean, if we just look at this specific example right here of going through traffic sources, manual, and then manual source/medium, we can see that overall a lot of these sales come from Google just in general. Whether they see a Google ad first, then they search it up and it comes as an organic sale, it doesn't really matter. Everything really kind of is intertwined and everything is helping each other. But now speaking a little bit more about the brand, this brand had an average order value of roughly $355. So it's not necessarily a high ticket store, nor is it a low ticket store. It's right in the middle. But because of this very strong AOV, we were able to test a wide variety of different things and a wide variety of different strategies. And when you combine that with a niche like this, where they're not just going after any random car parts, or they're not just going after any random car accessory, but rather something very specific for a specific type of car brand in a certain year, etc., then it becomes extremely easy to truly scale the brand to the next level. But before we go over anything else, let's start off by understanding what we did on the landing page side of things, because yes, if we just look at their overall conversion rates, we can see it's a 1.51%, which might not seem that high, but with that AOV, that's a pretty decent amount. Now, if we look at this example store right here, it's not the same store we work with right now, but it's very similar to how we laid things out with our brand. We can understand exactly what we did here to make this kind of conversion rate happen. If we go on to one of the specific product pages here, we'll have a better understanding of how it should be done. But keep in mind, just because this brand or the brand we're working with has a certain layout for the landing page does not mean you should be copying this for your brand. Every brand is different, every niche is different. Your main job as the CEO or CMO is to ensure that your audience sees exactly what they want to see on your landing page. And with this specific niche, what we understood from not just working with this brand, but multiple brands under my Google Ads agency or marketing, which, by the way, if you're doing $1 million a year or more in revenue and you want to scale to the next level with Google Ads to multi-seven figures, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see how we can essentially work together and make that happen. But from our analysis, we understood that they like things very simple. They don't like too much color, they don't like too much texture, none of that stuff, because usually people shopping for car parts and accessories that that are very expensive are more well-off people with more money. They don't have time to play around. So because of that, we also implemented more of a black and white approach to our website, and that's what we suggested for the e-commerce brand we are working with. But along with that, the main things that we really implemented that really helped the brand scale to the next level, because if we compare the last 30 days to the previous 30 days, we can see that this brand has actually scaled up tremendously from when we started working together, because we just started working with this brand roughly a month ago, and despite that, we were able to scale this brand by 37% in total revenue while keeping the ROAS where it should be, which is above a 10x. But the way we were able to do that is, of course, by changing up first the product images to only display the highest quality product images. Keep in mind, the higher the price of the product, the better your perceived value of that product should be. So if you want somebody to pay $1,800 for your product, then obviously the product images need to be very high quality. And that was one problem with the brand we were working with, where a lot of these product images on their store, they weren't the most highest quality and they just had not edited them. So we kind of worked along with them to get rid of the bad product images, only leave the good ones. But along with that, we started by implementing certain trust related factors on the website, such as a guarantee to save checkout, custom trust badge. You don't want to be adding something from Google or just some generic one. It should be customized to fit your theme, to fit your color scheme, etc. Like Unplugged Performance did right here, exactly what we did. But that was enough to really kind of increase the overall trust users had for this brand. But then we added a bit more customization to it by adding things like finding an installer button, because these are very specific to this niche. You cannot just install these car parts or accessories by yourself. You do need some help on that. So those were all the kind of informational things we suggested to the brand that they add. But along with that, moving on now to the description, we made sure that all of the product images within the description and just the overall description in terms of keywords was, number one, search engine optimized, but number two, also had further images of the product in use, because as you can see here, when you see the product in use, you're more likely to visualize it on your own car, and as a result, you're more likely to purchase it. So that's kind of what we used, and it worked to our advantage here because the conversion rate did start to improve. And then at the end, it was just very simple reviews. So despite following a very simple, straightforward path of just having the right product images with trust factors with the right description, this brand was able to really start scaling because of the increase in perceived value we focused on. So once the foundation was in place, once the landing page was a bit wetter, we moved on to the Google Ads side of things. Now with the Google Ads side of things, they already had a pretty decent kind of campaign approach going on, but it was really not ideal for their brand. And what I mean by that is, if we go a little bit back in time to before we started working with this brand, we can see how they had laid things out. So the campaigns, they were essentially the same campaigns which are spending money right now. However, there were a few problems. The first major problem was there was no proper segmentation of the products, which meant a bunch of these different products, and by the way, this brand right here has thousands and thousands of different SKUs, but all of these different SKUs were jam-packed inside of one major campaign. That was it, just one major Performance Max campaign. All of these other ones were barely getting any attention, and what they had done was just put all these 50,000, 100,000 SKUs inside here. And that was not a good strategy, because that meant a lot of these products were just sitting there and not getting tested. But number two, they had not implemented any type of different strategy for scaling products or for making them profitable. This is what I call the TPS approach: testing, profitability, and scaling. This is what we normally do for segmentation. They had done nothing of that sort. So what that meant was any bad product within the campaign, it was running alongside all of the good products, all of the products which were scaling, which is not the right approach, because that means the algorithm now pushes the same level of efforts, the same level of budget for a bad product as it does for a good product, which again is never ideal. You want to separate out both of these kind of situations. But that's kind of what was going on within this brand. So understanding that, we decided to kind of implement a more segregated approach where we began slowly to take out all of the bad products from this campaign, the main one, and all of the mediocre products to then establish into their own separate Performance Max campaigns and standard shopping campaigns. But along with that, we wanted to really make sure the product titles were heavily search engine optimized with the right keywords, with the right years, because it's very important for this niche to have the specific item details. And that's exactly what we began doing in the beginning, along with improving product images. But once all of those things were done, then it was time for just more segregation. So what we did is we kind of shut off all of the other random campaigns which were not really making too much money. We kind of got rid of all of the bad products which were also not very profitable, and we kept it only around the good products. So now if we just look at all of the enabled campaigns right now, we're working with roughly 12 different campaigns only, which are actually running and which are actually getting sales. And what we have done again is a lot of these other campaigns, these are segregation based campaigns based on the product sub collection. So what we did is we kept that original first campaign running for testing different products, then everything else here, whatever was actually doing well within the original Performance Max campaign, and if it was kind of related to each other, like a specific collection of products, we separated it out into its own separate approach with its own separate campaigns. But in addition to that, what we did is we actually started testing a bit more of the other campaign types, like a dynamic search campaign, which actually is running at a 10x ROAS. Now, along with that, what we did is we implemented two separate approaches for, number one, getting those underperforming products to begin performing. So this Performance Max campaign approach right here, it was essentially to take all of the very bad performing products, not only in the last 30 days, but also historically, and to give them a second chance. And what we did is we set a target ROAS here because we don't want to just let the campaigns run wild. We want to set certain restrictions so that they can be monitored and they can actually be profitable. And as you can see, it's running at a fairly decent ROAS of a 5.48x, because otherwise, if we had not done this, they would have just gotten no sales at all. We would have missed out on roughly $30,000 in sales. So this underperforming approach really worked out very well. And then the third kind of major approach that we implemented here was the low volume approach. This is something different we just did for this brand, where any product that this brand sells with very low search volume, we essentially put it with its own approach right here with its own campaign. And as you can see, it's even performing better than the underperforming products. These low monthly search volume products, they had potential, but because they were in the original campaign, the original testing campaign, where there were a lot of other products overlapping and overtaking because they had more search volume, these products were not getting attention. So proper segregation really helped these brands begin to stabilize and begin to start scaling. But as you can see, just with 12 campaigns alone, with proper segregation, ensuring that there's no overlap of the same product in multiple campaigns, we were able to really maintain decent scale for this brand. And right now, overall long term, we are going to start scaling horizontally and vertically for this brand. That's literally all this brand needs, and your brand also might just need this much. Horizontal scaling is where we scale with multiple different campaign types like demand gen, YouTube, display, etc. But along with that, we're going to implement vertical scaling, which is drastically scaling up the budget. And the main thing most e-commerce brands don't understand is you need to only be scaling the budgets up if it's spending that number every single day. If it's spending way below your target ad spend per day, for example, this budget right here is $2,800 per day. So if this campaign is not spending roughly $2,800, maybe around $2,500 or more, then it's not ideal to vertically scale. But as you can see, we're roughly spending $2,800 every single day. That means this account and this brand is primed for vertical scaling. If we increase the budgets now, it's going to respond positively because it's already spending at the daily budget we have set. So this is how you know when your brand is ready for vertical scaling. Otherwise, if you don't see this happening, it's better to stick with the horizontal scaling strategy. But that's essentially it. With just 12 campaigns alone, we have been able to explode this brand to a $1.8 million in revenue per month. And your brand can do the same. But again, if your brand does $1 million a year or more in revenue, you need just a little bit of extra help scaling your brand to the next level. Go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and schedule a free call with me to see how we can essentially work together and make that happen. But check out this video right here on my newest product testing strategy, which we use for this brand to scale it aggressively.